Thank you for joining us. You're listening to the St. John's Farmers Market Radio Almanac. This is a show about business and market culture in and around St. John's, Newfoundland. This program is produced and recorded at CHMR FM 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, and is aired on other great stations in the province and elsewhere in the country. It can also be heard online at www.chmr.ca. I'm your host, Matthew Ledrew, owner and operator at Engine Books, the province's fastest growing independent publisher of books.
Okay, thank you for joining me for another very special episode of the St. John's Farmers Market Radio Almanac on CHMR. We are here today with a very, very special guest. We have Theresa Murphy on, the artist behind Hibernating Fox Studios, a wonderful, wonderful artist that you have seen at the farmers market every so often, whenever she is not working with the farmers markets. Thank you for joining me, Theresa.
Thank you for having me.
No worries, no worries at all. Tell me about your art. You're one of the first vendors I ever met at this. I was at a non-SJFM event, and I was very attracted to your art that you do. This
Oh,
very
thank you.
line on paper with some water acrylics, but I don't know. I'm not an artist, so that's might be completely incorrect. Please just tell me about your art a little bit.
Yeah, so I work with a variety of different mediums. I can't really stick to one thing. Um, I've always been drawing since I was a kid. So I do work in graphite and ink. I've also been doing watercolor painting, and then in 2018, I fell in love with printmaking. So lino cut relief printmaking and dry point etchings are some of my favorites right now.
Nice, nice, nice. What's lino cut? Explain this to me, because
Yes.
pretend I'm dumb, because I am.
No,
Sure, I learned in
it's
school, but
yeah, that's a fair point. Some people might be familiar with woodcut, and it's very similar to that, just the substrate or the material you use is different. So back in, say, the 70s, it may have actually been lino, like linoleum on the floor. These days it's made of like natural fibers that are I guess compressed together, and you carve into that the relief and the negative image of the image you want to print. And then when you roll that with ink and run it through a printing press, it'll transfer the image for you. And then you can get, as you re-roll it with more ink, you can get multiple prints off um, the one block that you carve. So it's similar to, like, if you're familiar with Graham Blair, he does woodcuts, very beautiful woodcuts. So he carves into actual hard wood and uses that as his block.
Theresa Murphy, do you ever read reviews of your business, of your art, Hibernating Fox Studios? Do you ever get feedback on it? If so, how do you deal with good feedback or bad feedback or whatever? Mentally, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I find again, being at markets is the best place to get feedback, because you get to see the person's reaction in person. So like their immediate, like sometimes people do double takes, or something will catch their eye and they'll just have to come in closer and kind of like take it in, which just gets my heart a little flutter. Whereas, like, we're so used to, with social media, Instagram, just consuming images, that it doesn't really have the same specialness, I guess, that maybe it used to. Like, we're just so used to taking for granted that all these images and graphics that we see constantly was created by somebody.
Yeah.
And you can just go on Instagram for free, and a lot of art galleries now, especially over COVID, you can go in for free and look at all the old masterwork. But yeah, seeing someone's reaction in person, and you get to see all the little details, I find, of the artwork too in person.
Yep.
So I get to have a conversation with people about, this black cat looks like the kitty that they have or that they had as a child, or different stories about how I came to create the artwork or what it means to them. So yeah, it's always amazing getting feedback, and I love seeing the pictures people have of their artwork that they purchased up in their homes. So it has its little home in their home.
Little home there. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's got its own little life outside of me. So yeah, it's always amazing getting that feedback.
Nice. Nice. Um, Theresa Murphy, does your work at the St. John's Farmers Market energize you or does it exhaust you? I'm thinking about at the end of the day, are you like, yeah, that was fun, and like now you've got energy to go do your day, or is it the opposite of that, whatever the opposite of that would be?
um, so I'd say it's a mix of both. Definitely physically exhausting because you're standing on concrete floor for like 8 or 9 hours in the day. You've been lugging all your stuff out of your car and setting it up for an hour, and then you have to break it down at the end of the day. So there's definitely that part of it, but like mentally and emotionally, like through a market day, like I said, with the feedback from customers and from other vendors, and then just ideas I get throughout the day of like, oh, if I did this, like someone will ask if I have a print of dog berries, or someone will ask if I have an orange cat, like just different things. It's like, oh, I could make that and then have it for next time, or that kind of thing. So it kind of is in the back of my mind, or I might have an idea for something right away. So in that way it is energizing, but then also like for the next day, I'm just like physically out. Like I'm done for about a day afterwards. Like you're talking and smiling for 8 or 9 hours. Like that's yeah, definitely physically exhausting, but rewarding as well.
Yeah. Just being, I call it on, just being on for that many hours
Yes.
sometimes is
Yeah.
just mentally exhausting.
Yeah. And it's like a sincere and genuine best part of you, but it's also very much putting that on for that length of time.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And then you have to deal with that, because the thing is, you have to be, there's, I find market days interesting. There's a neutral market day, and there's good market days are when I have more people who come around and I have a genuinely positive experience with. You know what I mean? Who are like,
Mm.
where the smile that I'm giving isn't fake. They're like, oh my God, someone here is doing this. You know what I mean? And they ask questions and they have interest, or a young writer comes by and asks a question or something like that.
Mm.
Um, Negative days are when you get sometimes customers who ask ridiculous questions, like with you, I picture someone coming around your booth and being like, so it's just like ink on art on paper, like that's it. You know what I mean? Yes, you've mastered the concept of what art is, and you have to just kind of like keep that customer service when you really want to be like, yeah, that's what art is, man. Yeah, that's
Yeah, well, for sure, like as an artist, I know that what I do isn't going to appeal to 100% of people by any means, and it's not intended to really. Like there are some things I do that are more neutral and have more appeal. But there's also stuff that I create genuinely because I like it. And then the people who like it, when they see it, then they like it really speaks to them. And that's amazing. I don't often have situations where people will visibly be like disgusted or put off by what I do.
you
I
clearly didn't write a book that you called Black Womb. That was the first book that you had at your table when you were
yeah.
a young person and didn't think through that title.
But yeah, like I remember one of my first market days back in early 2019. I had what we'll call an artistic nude print. It was a limited edition of 4 etchings I did, and I would get like teehees from little boys when they would walk by the table and see boobies, and I would get kind of like stern glances from moms who didn't know how to approach that human bodies are natural with their 7-year-old boy. So I would kind of like start putting those towards the back so that you wouldn't see them from a certain angle if you were a certain height, but that if you were an adult,
like they do with adult magazines, where you put it on the top shelf and you stagger it so that like the other magazines are covering up to the neckline of the model. Like,
yeah, it's like in some cultures, in some countries, the human body is just such an accepted part of the culture that it's not this taboo thing that we kind of have here in North America.
especially from my experience, which is limited, especially when it comes to breasts, when it comes like that, like, because cultures where that's not taboo and that's not considered a thing like it is here, they very much look at us and go like, from like, and this is like painting everyone from those cultures with a broad brush kind of thing that I don't mean to, but like there's this sense of like, are you children? Like why are you so obsessed with the thing that makes milk? You know what I mean? Like, where it's not tied in with sex at all. It's like, that's like, why
but that was only like on a few occasions. That didn't happen too often. But I don't know if it's just people being polite, but I didn't often have people being like outwardly giving negative feedback in the moment or being turned off. Like if they don't like it, they'll just go on.
That's interesting that you said about like, oh, the mom who doesn't know how to approach these subjects, or the side eye, or this stuff like that, because like I sometimes want to do like a massive like research project where I survey like 1,000 random people throughout their entire lives. Like, every year for your entire life, you do a survey, and clearly I'll die before the research is done, because I will be older than the children who start the survey. But like, at what point do you switch over? Because you have to imagine that at some point, people like that who were like, I don't want my kid to see that, were young and wanted to see that. Like, this evolution of a human where it's like, I am young and want to seek out these different things. And now I am in the middle where I'm like, yes, I can get those things. And now I'm like, no, people should not see these things. Like, you know what I mean? Where I'm like, and when is this going to happen to me? And I'm sitting here like, when am I going to become a fuddy-duddy? And then I remember that I'm constantly yelling at my neighbors to like turn down that loud music. I'm like, I think I was born a fuddy-duddy.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of an ingrained culture of shame in some regards, with regards to bodies and natural bodies, and even when it comes to like body hair, or the made up term cellulite that Vogue made up in the 80s to shame women or whatever. And people of different body sizes, like there's all kinds of shame that comes with bodies. And I think on top of like the moral shame of being chaste and so on that came from the Victorian era, that people, I think the way they deal with that is to outwardly scold and try to distance themselves from it. Like, I'm a good person and I don't do that, so that's not good, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
Interesting. Vogue made up the word cellulite?
Yeah, I think it was actually in the 50s or 60s, but yeah, they complete, like, cellulite isn't a medical thing.
Yep.
It's just a term that's used to describe certain like pockets of like fat deposits on the body. But yeah, it was either Vogue or Cosmopolitan. Yeah, they're the ones who really made it like that it was a thing that women should be concerned about. And then there became a whole industry of like creams and pills and so on and so forth. But it's just a natural part of most women's bodies.
Yeah, most people's. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You'd never see it on me because I'm covered with hair. So that's, this is the natural pixelization of me.
Yeah.
Theresa Murphy, what does success look like to you? When you envision success with a piece, or success with your business, or whatever, what does that look like?
I'm trying to let go of the idea of perfect or ideal. So I try to, when I'm making a piece, make it the best I can for this moment. Um, and if it's an idea I really like that I wasn't able to realize in my mind's eye, I tell myself I can revisit this later when I have more of the skills to match what I imagined it should be. Um, yeah, so for what would be the success of a print? I mean, not that we should strive for validation, but if other people also enjoy and can get something from that work, um, I would say that would be part of its success if it conveyed what I thought it should. So, a quote I enjoy is to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. So, if so, like that piece I talked about, that piece I talked about that was the artistic nude. Um, one woman out of all who have seen it gave me a side eye, but there's another woman who, as soon as she saw it, connected with it because of it was called flowing. And it was an image of a woman in a body of water pulling down the night sky. And the intention of that piece that I couldn't articulate in words, but I did in the visual. I sold every original of that work because the women who saw it connected with it so much and um, had meaning for them. So I think um, that would be a success for sure if someone felt comforted or connection to an artwork I did.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it. I agree that on some level, like success, we shouldn't.
Like I would still
I'm
make
always
the artwork if it didn't sell. I would still make it.
yes.
I probably wouldn't do like um, the reproduction prints, like make
No.
a limited edition of 100 because I know this black cat print will sell because people love cats. um, but I would still be making the work. Like I would still have my sketchbooks and I would still be making the work and I wouldn't be worrying about like how am I going to package this? How am I going to price this? That sort of thing. But yeah,
No, it's
sorry, I interrupted you.
no, it's not that. It's the like I don't base the value of a work off like the response to it or anything like that. But and sometimes it is about this like this is my expression and I'm putting it out there and if most people don't like it that's fine kind of thing. Like there is art like that. But sometimes I'm also like there is a bit of like back and forth to this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I reject
Mhm.
the idea that art is solely a solo endeavor. To me, all art, writing, portraiture, like art, like the lithograph, all that kind of stuff is there's always two people. There's the person making it and the person viewing it. You know what I mean? Like every time. So like I'm always like, oh, don't forget the other person. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, because
you know,
there's an expected audience, but also the art is created within our own understanding of our current culture and environment, which is based on a history of all the, you know, artists and people that came before us and our own understanding of where we are in world and time and space. So there's so much of it that goes into it, as much as someone can try to be like an independent artist or unaffected by trends or culture like that'll still naturally play into it regardless. And then just that feedback loop of then now I've created this thing that other people will be viewing and interacting with at some point.
absolutely, absolutely. Theresa Murphy, if you could tell your younger artist self just one thing, if you could zip back in time, sneak up behind yourself and go and whisper something in young Theresa's ear, what would you whisper?
um, I would say just keep creating, um, because something I've learned as an adult is that art is a skill, and if it's something that you do, if you spend 10,000 hours doing anything, you'll be good at it. And eventually, the more you do and practice and make, all the bad things you make will eventually lead to something that's good or that meets what your own internal idea of good is. So I would just say keep creating, because everything you do is practice, and you need the bad ideas to get to the good ideas. Like, it'll all come out eventually.
That's true. That's true. As someone who's commercialized their art a lot, like I have, there's something to be said for the stuff that now is bad, like that I would never show to anyone, because that's the only stuff that's still mine. Like everything else I've mentioned, if it's at all sellable, if it's at all like I can find an audience for this, I have gone back and reworked it and pushed it out there. But it started as being just for me. You know what I mean? Like a lot of art
Yeah.
does. The stuff that's flawed or unsellable or bad art is the only stuff now that gets to still be mine. So there's something very like, oh yay, this one's bad, but at the same time, it's mine now,
Yeah, that's like your old book of, and I say your as in the royal, your
Yeah.
old book of high school poetry.
Oh no, I
Like,
published that.
it's bad, but at the same time, it's like, oh, this is mine. This is, representative of what it was. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Exactly.
it's like all those old superhero drawings, like they'll never be commercially available, but they were
Now you're on my language. Like we both
special
did
for what
that.
they were.
That's our version of weird angsty high school poetry is superhero drawings. Yes.
Mm.
You, me, and Jim Shooter. Yep. Um, Theresa Murphy, is there a product that you've stopped featuring at your St. John's Farmers Market table? And if so, why?
That's a good question. I used to do these little mini canvas magnets. So you can get pre-stretched canvas panels, but they'd be tiny, like 3 by 3 inch. And I would do little paintings, or I carve my own stamps. So I would stamp on them and like color them in and make those into magnets. And I just stopped doing that. For what they were and the size, I didn't feel right charging what they were actually worth for the time I put into them, so I just stopped doing those.
That's fair.
Yeah, and like I find originals usually do better at markets, but it's also good to have a variety of price points and sizes so that people can still feel they can support you if they enjoy your work. So that's why I still carry things like the cards, and I do flat magnets now instead of the canvas ones. So they're just reproduction prints that I adhere to magnets. So that's something in the like $4 to $5 price range that people can purchase if they're unable to do to get an original artwork. Because I know what I used to do is I would buy postcards. So if I went to like an art gallery, or if I saw an artist I enjoyed, I would be able to afford buying a little postcard, and it would be a little 5x7 or 4x6 of this like image I loved, and I wouldn't be able to ever afford getting the original, but I could have that little keepsake. So
Nice. You said you adhere things to magnets.
Mhm.
Magnets are what you use to adhere something to something else. Like it's a medium. Like someone took that magnet,
Yeah.
presumably, and put it on their fridge or their whatever. And they've adhered your art via the magnet to their fridge.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it'd be like saying like I adhered the glue to the back of the canvas. I'm like, well, that's the medium you use to adhere it to something else. You don't count that. So and presumably you did use glue or something to adhere it to the magnet. So you adhered the glue to the art in order to adhere the magnet to the art, in order for someone else to adhere the fridge to the art. There's just levels of adhering inception going on, and it's interesting to me.
Yeah. I buy roll magnets on a roll with an adhesive strip on them.
Yeah.
And then I order little reproduction prints of my original work and then cut them out and stick them to the magnet and then cut the magnet. Yeah. But you make it sound a lot more interesting that way.
It is interesting. The fact that we call it like on a word level, the fact that we're like that, it's like I would never be able to just slap glue on the back of something and then sell it in that state and be like, you can choose what you stick it to. Get it while it's wet, but with magnets you can do that.
Yeah.
The phrase "get it while it's wet" seemed to break you.
Yeah, that's I don't know if that would make it very far in a marketing boardroom, but it depends on the product.
Yep. Theresa Murphy, what is an early experience where you learned that language has power?
You just got deep.
Yeah. We went from talking about the nature of magnetism to
okay. So I did my undergrad sociology and political science, and one of my sociology teachers in his heyday would told us about all these stories about how he would conduct experiments with his classroom. So he would come in different states of sober to see what the reaction from his classmates would be. But by the time I was in university, he obviously couldn't do that anymore. But we were told this one story of, and you've probably heard this, of a doctor and their child get in a car accident and they get picked up by an ambulance and go to the ER. And when they get there, the surgeon says, I can't perform on these people, and asks why. And the surgeon says, because it's my son. So and I probably told that wrong, but
you gave away the answer.
The implication in that is that we're assuming that the surgeon is the male parent, when in fact it's actually the mother. So our assumptions about gender, even when we don't even say gendered words, and like people of authority and who holds power, and just ingrained like gender roles and that sort of thing, the amount of power our language and even what we don't even say has over us. So yeah, I'm sure there are ones that happened before that, but that one definitely sticks out to me.
That one definitely is, but like, okay, that anecdote / riddle / whatever does comment on gender roles and stuff like that, but it also to me is some trickery, because like no one in that situation would calmly say, I can't operate on that person, they're my son. You know what I mean? Like if this fictitious physician was in this situation, they would be like, and you're a doctor and you go into the operating room to perform something, and you knew your son and husband were in the car together, and now your son's here. Your response would be like, well, I cannot perform this operation, for that is my son. It would be like the riddle should be, and then the doctor started to scream in existential horror and lost his mind and curled into a fetal position on the ball. What's the answer to the riddle? And it's like, you know what I mean? Like part of it is the phrasing. Not to be devil's advocate.
It's definitely the editor in you that, this is not believable.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, there's more problems to this story than that are there. Like, this doctor's a serial killer. Like, is this doctor responsible for the death of their son?
All right. Well, thank you for coming on again. For all of you listening, we'll be here the same time next week to talk more about business culture in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. Be sure to drop by and visit our guests and all the other vendors at the St. John's Farmers Market this week.